Thank you for being here. I'm Terri, I'm President and CEO here at the Chandler Chamber, and this is part of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series. And I just want to thank the committee for their hard work on this. This is really important. In fact, we have one of our co-chairs, Dr. Bill Crawford, here in the room, and we have Beth on the committee, Dr. Batten, and then a few others that are also online. So thank you. This is really important as we continue to grow as a community here in Chandler. So with that being said, I want to make sure that we have an esteemed panelist of speakers today, and I know this group is not shy, so I'm excited about the questions that they're going to be able to pose to you. So thank you. These programs and events would not be possible without the help of our sponsors. Our sponsors are PayPal, Toyota Financial Services, Intel, Edward Jones, Terri, McKibbin, Salt River Project, and Wells Fargo. I'd also like to recognize Representative Jennifer Pollock who represents East Chandler down at the legislature. She knows that workforce is very important, as well as our DE&I efforts, and she's been a huge supporter of us in those efforts. So before we dive into today's event, I'd like to introduce our moderator today, and that is Dr. Cindy Batten, and who has not only become a personal friend and colleague, but her background is pretty impressive in the things that she continues to do here in our community. She is the founder and CEO of Advocate Consulting, and she is a transformational business leader with over 25 years of experience in the design, development, and implementation of enterprise-wide workforce optimization initiatives. And one of Dr. Batten's areas of expertise is organizational change in the area of equity and inclusion, and works with Fortune 100 global companies and government entities to develop strategies that change the policies and practices that around DE&I. As a person of color who has experienced acts of discrimination firsthand and is working as an advocate for change, she has a unique perspective on the DE&I. Dr. Batten is committed to her goal of discovering innovative, common sense approaches and addressing the ongoing problems of social injustice, inequality, and lack of cultural diversity in organizations, and create positive change and sustainable change. And that's really important as we continue to move forward, because Chandler is a global community and we need to make sure that we are representing that. So please help and join me, Dr. Cindy Batten.
Thank you for that introduction, Terri. And I am proud to introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist is Ashley Atkins. And Ashlee is currently the president of the Greater Phoenix Urban League Youth Professionals, where she's been part of the movement for 6 years. In addition to her Phoenix Urban League Youth Professionals, she does volunteer work. She's also an accomplished HR professional with over 10 years of experience in training, recruitment, project management, with a focus on diversity within the workforce. Ashlee is currently the diversity manager for ASU's Enterprise Partners. She holds a master's degree in business administration, business administration from the University of Phoenix, and a Bachelor of Arts in psychology from the University of Arizona. Ashlee has sat on boards of the National Association of African Americans in Human Resources, Arizona chapter, and the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Phoenix Metropolitan chapter, both where she was able to build and network with Black HR professionals around the Valley and work with Black women within advocacy and mentorships. Thank you, Ashlee, for being here today. Thank you. Our second panelist is Ashu Bakley. Ashu is Vice President in the Internet of Things Group and the General Manager of Internet of Things Portfolio Engineering at Intel Corporation. He oversees engineering for the group's processor product families, as well as edge interference accelerators. He is also the security sponsor for IoT and inclusion at Intel, and has been an external speaker on inclusion. Ashu also sits on the board of Si Se Puede Foundation. Ashu earned a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Bombay in India, a master's degree in computer engineering from the University of Colorado, an MBA degree from Thunderbird School of Global Management, and a certificate in corporate boards from Harvard University. He holds several patents in the areas of security and digital imaging. And welcome, Ashu.
Thank you.
And last but not least, our final panelist, Dr. Velma Trahan. Dr. Trayham is an award-winning entrepreneur, sought-after speaker, and economic empowerment specialist who believes that inclusive, equitable businesses and communities are what create opportunity and drive prosperity. Through Thinkzilla consulting group, Dr. Trayham builds, manages, and helps bring greater awareness to programs and initiatives that are vital to supporting underserved and underrepresented communities around the U.S. To date, Dr. Trayham has mentored more than 5,000 minority women business owners in the past 3 years. She also has developed programs for notable Fortune 500 organizations and was recently featured in Forbes' November 2020 issue as a top business consultant. Dr. Trayham is a recipient of the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Awards given by President Biden. Welcome, Dr. Trayham. Okay, so this is a really important topic today. In the organizational consulting work that I do, especially in the area of EDI, it is a constant discussion with my clients about how to find diverse talent. So this is a really hot topic among organizations today. And our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee has put together some questions for the panel today. And then at the end of the panel discussion, then we'll have Q&A from the audience, if time allows. When we think about diverse talent, let's not limit our thinking to just ethnicity. Diverse talent includes many things. It could be physical abilities, gender, age, all those things. So when we think about diversity, let's think about it holistically when it comes to talent. Okay, so let's jump right into the conversation. This question I am going to direct to Ashlee. Many employers have reported challenges in obtaining interest from diverse talent. What are some practices that employers should use to attract the widest range of candidates?
With my current company, I've been consulting with our talent acquisition team as well. Some of the methods that we're using is to connect with our local organizations and national organizations as well. So to build those relationships with them. So for instance, I'm with the Greater Phoenix Urban Young Professionals, reaching out to whoever the point of contact is for that particular organization and saying, hey, are you guys having any workshops? Do you have a newsletter, a job board that we can try to get on? Anytime we have jobs, can we send them your way? So building those relationships as well. Visiting your local job fairs. I know a lot, it's kind of hybrid now, but not the big ones, right? So go within the different community organizations. So I know some of the schools may have job fairs. Some of the organizations may have career fairs as well. So try to think a little bit outside of your norm of what you're currently doing and how you're reaching out to certain people. But I always preach, just be intentional with wherever you're going, you know, for that. So don't think big, don't think like, let me go to this Indeed, let me go to this SHRM fair, go to the smaller ones. They matter just as much as the bigger ones as well. But the biggest thing right now is building relationships, I would say.
Thank you, Ashley. Thanks. I'm going to direct that same question to Ashu. Ashu, I'm going to repeat the question for you. Many employers have reported challenges in obtaining interest from diverse talent. What are some practices that employers should use to attract the widest range of candidates?
think what in at least the high tech industry, what we find is we have to build the pipeline, right? Can't wake up one day and say, okay, now we will go get talent. That talent has to be nurtured through universities, through community colleges, through whatever the means are, right? So we have to start building the pipeline from 3-4 years ahead of it. The other thing that the pandemic has now opened up for us is flexibility in where we can operate. And I think in some cases, what we're finding is can't wait for talent to come to us. We just have to go wherever talent is. Right? So we have to be more open with allowing people to be in geographies and cities where they choose to be and yet work for us. Right? So opening up your aperture of where you can operate, building a good pipeline, and then ensuring standard practices like, when you interview somebody, you have a diverse panel. And the last thing I would say is it can't be a one-shot thing. It can't be limited to, okay, I'm going to look for diverse talent or to attract diverse talent. You just have to be in the community. You have to be part of the community, and you have to operate like you are doing things for the community, because I think that's what makes the community feel kinship towards you, and that's what we get the local talent.
Thank you so much. So this next question, Dr. Trayham, I say for you, because you've done a lot of work with women entrepreneurs and helping them with businesses and grow. So this question is, women's advocacy groups have shared findings that the demands of child and family care have pushed them away from applying for some roles. What can employers do to overcome this challenge?
It starts with a well planned out strategy. That's the first thing. When you look at the advantages and the disadvantages of women in having those responsibilities, what I found is that most organizations that incorporate a program to be more inclusive with family and giving more opportunities in terms of hybrid working, hybrid, and also having a workplace inclusive program that could allow them to adapt more to their family and their children.
And I suppose that there are some single fathers out there who have the same, challenge. So I think those benefits could apply equally to all.
And I think that offering flexible work schedules is important as well. A lot of times, what I found is that organizations don't have the culture of empathy. So having that empathy and the ability to share that with the workforce or with people in the workplace is important.
Thank you. Okay, so this next question I'm going to direct to each of you. During the height of the pandemic, many employers transitioned a significant portion of their workforce to a work from home environment. How does offering a remote work environment impact recruiting and retention?
I will start.
Oh, no,
I took some notes last night. I did all my hours. So I'm like, okay, let me just streamline this and put a little here and a little there. So the first thing is this, okay? Both companies and employees, they save money, okay? And so Lister's research estimates a typical employee savings of $11,000 a year per employee. So it saves the company and it also saves the employee from having to spend money on fuel. It also improves employee loyalty and retention. There was another research that showed that remote workers are likely to stay in their current jobs for 5+ years working remotely or hybrid.
She actually took some of mine. But no, totally agree. In the day and age that we are in right now, remote we've been losing a lot of candidates due to us not offering remote options. I know a lot of our jobs require you to be in person, but as he was saying, you're allowed to cast a wider, net out there with it saving money and getting more diverse candidates, because as you know, with Arizona, especially with Black people, we're only 5% of the population. So where else are we going to look for more diverse talent, right? So that's allowing you to go to different states and work remote there. Also, as Dr. Trayham was saying, even more so now, we're trying to save on gas, childcare. It's even better work-life balance for us. So why do we want to go back to traditional just 9 to 5 in the office as well? Because we're able to do so many other things, doctor's appointments, do things around the house, do work, even though we're not supposed to be doing all that. But still, like, you come home and you're just like at ease with everything, right? And it's not the traditional model that we go by right now. What else did I have? I had some notes as well. And if you're not able to do remote, what my current company is doing, which I think is a great balance, is that we're offering Mondays and Fridays as remote options, right? So you can kind of ease into the week and ease out, right? And that Tuesday through Thursday, you're getting things done, but just to have some type of compromise within your work week. If you cannot have everybody remote 24/7 for the entire week, try to see what your company can allow for that flexibility and offering those optional days, whether it's once or twice a week.
Yeah, great points. Absolutely, absolutely wonderful points. And certainly, casting the net wider is a huge benefit. I mean, we've been trying to increase our African American population, I think, for a while. And now with the ability to go to different places, we've opened up a campus in Atlanta, right? So, I mean, you can do things like that because I think the options are much more open. So recruiting does become easier. On the other hand, retention could also be a problem because what is open to you, that is also open to your competition. So unless you are able to put in the right remote capabilities, allow people to contribute like they want, there's probably a competitor who also does exactly the same thing. They're going to go high, speed with that. I think last year 48% or 48 million people left their jobs, the Great Resignation. So it's really, really important that even when people are working at home, you make them feel part of the community. They don't community at work. They shouldn't feel isolated. They're able to contribute. I mean, there can be people who are not able to chime in because you can't see their facial expressions. There's different mechanisms that I think need to evolve so that the hybrid workplace of the future, right, can be successful. But for sure, it is the way to go. We cannot walk out of the pandemic carrying all the baggage from previous, right, pre-pandemic. As we come out of it, we have to reinvent how we do work and how we hire and how we retain talent.
All excellent points. And Ashu, you brought up about competitiveness of remote working. And then Ashlee, you talked about Mondays and Fridays. So we have this competitiveness across the board of who has the best remote working package. I think that's important. And this is a follow-on question to what I just asked. So we have approximately 3 to 4 generations in the workforce. Are maybe millennials or Gen X's, are they demanding different things when it comes from remote working, or how important is that remote working to them?
That's because the majority of our workforce, I would say probably 60% of our workforce are millennials and Gen Zs for that. So 2 things that obviously that they're looking for is that remote work and pay for that. So we have to find a way, because that's what we're going into in the future. Like, we're not going to have the older population there or be the majority of the workforce. So we have to find a way, as you were saying, to be flexible and to take those traditional values out the door for that. So whatever way it is, whether it's the hybrid, fully remote, or flexible work schedules, we have to think differently now. Because it is important right now, because as you know, they'll quit and go to another job really quick. There's so many options out there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The other thing I'd like to add to that is mentorship programs. Are really important. I found that companies that are incorporating mentorship programs where their employees have an opportunity to learn, to be empowered from an economic empowerment standpoint, and to gain leadership skills, that allows them to further their purpose and their passion. So that's good for retention as well.
I'm glad you brought that up, because as we were talking, I thought 2 years ago, we wouldn't even, remote would never have come up in the conversation. We would be talking about training, mentorship, skills development, professional, what is my path, and how here we are, remote working, and retention, so important. Really interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna go on to our next question. Ensuring a fair and equitable hiring practice is important to most employees. What best practices can you share to ensure that the hiring process is free from conscious and unconscious bias?
The first thing is doing an assessment of your current DE&I hiring policies and practices. Oftentimes, organizations either A, don't have those policies in place, or B, they have the policies in place, but they're outdated. They were created 10, 15, 20 years ago. So you need to go back and you need to revisit what those practices are, and then include programs and recommendations, and also have the proper KPIs in place so that you know what the goal that you're trying to accomplish, and then you have, you're able to understand what's working, what's not working, and you're quickly able to adapt to what your findings are.
Yeah, what we're building out right now is hiring manager training, a very thorough training for that. We, coming from my recruitment background, we have everybody hiring, right? So we have our executive leadership team. We have our frontline people that are doing interview panels, things of that nature. So we need to make sure everybody's on the same page. We're building out interviewing with implicit bias, unconscious bias, to go through. We're giving them resources as far as checklists to look into as you're going into an interview. So what to check yourself on going into the interview as you're asking questions, and eliminating that bias that we all have. It's not just if we're white, black, or Latino or anything. It's just we all have these biases that we need to check ourselves for that. Another thing is I'm telling my talent acquisition team to have a very thorough intake session with each of the hiring managers as well. So, okay, this is the interview process, but these are the things that we want you to look out for. These are the type of interview questions that that you can incorporate into your interview, and just do's and don'ts, things not to ask that may be offensive, and things that you can ask for that. So we're making sure that we have the resources for our hiring managers, and no matter who they are, as long as they are touching a candidate, they need to go through this program.
Great points. I mean, at least for me, the point that you brought up about realizing that everyone has biases, right? At least for me, I personally make sure that I'm mindful of the biases that I might have, and check that. That's important. In terms of the policy, absolutely needs to be refreshed every so often, and always be vigilant. But it really starts off with, even creating a job requisition. Make sure that the language in the requisition is inclusive. It starts right there, right? I mean, it is very easy for a language in, let's say you're having an administrative assistant, for it to point towards a female candidate, or in some cases, mechanical engineers, male candidate, right? I mean, and I think that bias has to just be straightened. Then as you get the resumes, make sure you're doing some kind of blind screening of them, so that you eliminate any bias over there. And finally, make sure your panel is diverse. Make sure that there's all kinds of diversity of thought that is represented on the panel, and that the job description is pertinent to the job itself. That you're not adding 5 other things just because the previous person who was doing that role happened to have those qualities, because that immediately just sets the next person is going to be exactly like the previous person was. So just a few tips, but I think going through a thorough assessment is important.
So I recently, personal experience, I recently sat down with a client, had a heart to heart. We were about to engage in an EDI engagement. And I wanted to get, this was a C-level executive in the company, I want to get his feeling on things. And he says, I want the best candidate. I want to get the best candidate. It's kind of like, I said, what do you mean by the best? We were talking about recruiting diverse talent. I said, what do you mean by the best candidate? He goes, sort of like the NBA. If I want the best NBA players, and I have to go get black players. I was kind of taken aback by that. And I said, are you saying that best can't be anybody? So I'm wondering, how would you all respond to a question like that? Because it's kind of common. I'm fortunate enough that I have a relationship with that person that you can speak honestly. If somebody tells you, they imply that the best talent are not diverse candidates. You can sit with that. I know, I do this like monkey wrenching.
Malcolm Gladwell, thinking in one of his books, he talks about the Canadian hockey team and how most of the players in the hockey team are born in the first quarter of the year. And it starts off with where the junior leagues cutoff happens. It happens in December. So from a very young age, you start creating a case where only a certain set of people will be stronger, and you give them opportunities. And I think what you end up doing is by doing these kind of cutoffs, you've lost 75% of the population that you could be nurturing. So I think we're just losing out. We're simply losing out by having a mental image of what a best candidate looks like. The business case is that you're losing out on a large part of the population that could be tapping into. So the best candidate is probably not the best candidate that people have.
For me, that's really interesting, because what I find is that if people knew better, they would actually do better. And I mean, it sounds simple, but when you have business case studies, I take the time to educate my clients. I understand that perhaps they just don't know some of the things that they don't know, but it's not what they don't know that hurt them, it's what they don't know that they don't know. And so I ask further questions to get a better understanding of why they think the way they think, and then we can share case studies with them to show why that's not the right way to think. A lot of this is mindset. And so we need to unlearn a lot of the things that we've learned, and we need to just do things different. And sometimes it takes for us to have those difficult conversations and ask those questions that provoke a different thought process.
And I think it just boils back down to like, what is the best in your perspective? Everybody has a different perspective for that. We need to go back to what are the requirements of the job? What's the skill sets that's going to be needed to provide for that particular position? what are the core competencies? So we need to go back to the basics, because I always say, like, we're gonna take away that whole, are they a culture fit? Are they a, whatever fit, are the best fit? Because everybody has a different perspective of what that looks like. We need to go back to the basics. What's the job? What's in the job description? Are they a good fit for that, no matter what color, what background they are coming from? And we can eliminate those biases and everything by having those set questions, those core competencies within the job description, and making sure everybody's being asked the same questions and going into it that way, but we have to get out of the mindset of culture fit or the best of the best, or if they have a MBA or whatever the case, can they do the job?
Thank you. I appreciate you answering that question. I kind of threw it out. It helps me too. This is good information. Okay, so my next question is, what are the practices that keep diverse talent? It's a two-part question here. So the first part is, what are the practices that keep diverse talent? And the second part of the question is, what practices can drive diverse talent away? So what do you do to keep, what practices keep them, and then what practices drive them away?
Well, I'll start again. What practices keeps them? So one of the things I'll say is that in working with corporations, I've found that through supplier diversity programs, we build out a lot of supplier diversity programs for our clients. And in those supplier diversity programs, they get an opportunity to work with diverse companies providing them services and products. One of the things that I've learned is that within those supplier diversity programs, there are programs that you can actually put in those programs in terms of mindset development, in terms of leadership, and going back to the whole what is the best talent thing. A lot of times, underrepresented communities or people in underrepresented communities, they have academically what it takes, but they may not have had an opportunity or had the resources to learn other things. And I found that most talent will be loyal to you if you invest the time in them to develop what needs to be developed to get where they need to be. And so in creating those programs, when you have an ecosystem of, let's just say, or a pipeline of 100 diverse businesses in your supply chain, then those 100 businesses, they have 15, 20 businesses that are connected to them. And so when we talk about, connecting to diverse work talent, well, corporate people congregate with corporate people. Entrepreneurs and, everybody in their ecosystem, they congregate with the people in their ecosystem. And so you build that by putting those systems in place and those programs in place that allows you to tap into those ecosystems. Does that make sense? Absolutely.
In regards to keeps, I think it's all with building trust with your employees, right? So having that dedicated, whether it's an HR professional, a DEI professional that's within the role, someone that from the underrepresented community or workforce are able to go to voice their concerns or opinions, or hey, I think we should do this to improve, the employee environment. With my experience with being a diversity manager, even though I'm within HR, but a lot of people come to me and that they wouldn't normally go to HR or to their managers about, and they're just coming to my office like, I just experienced this, like, how do you think I should approach, this type of thing? Because, I understand where they're coming from. So I think that helps a lot. So building that trust, inclusive programming, of course. So, and getting the employees' voices as well. So we have a DEI council as well. So we have diversity months, we have different lunch and learns that are out there, but it's all employee facing and it's created by our employees as well. And just making sure that their voices are being heard and they're part of leading these particular programs and having that sense of belonging, that they have a piece in growing the company overall. And yeah, just overall, just that inclusive environment. So whether that's within your meetings, whether that's within programmings or initiatives, making sure everybody's voice is heard. So even if they're quiet, say, hey, Ashley, what do you think, about this topic? So I know we have a bunch of like introverts and people that are shy, but we want to make sure that we're including everybody, no matter what, for that. So I think that's what keep people in the opposite is obviously not doing those things for that. So
Okay.
that's my
Great point. I think talked about KPIs, right? And you have having a hiring practices, you have KPIs, and we did that a few years back, and we were able to exceed our KPIs of being able to attract diverse talent. But having all the diverse talent in the company isn't worth much unless they're feeling included in every conversation, right? So inclusion, as you mentioned, that is super important. Unfortunately, inclusion isn't something you can do. Inclusion is something that the other person has to feel, and you have to watch for it in every step of the way. Some things, realizing that oftentimes the diverse talent will be the minority in a room, ensuring that they have a seat at the table, right? And at corporate levels, doing things like having employee resource groups that are officially sponsored, right? That officially recognize whether it's a sexual preference related thing or whether it's a gender related resource group. Make sure that those opportunities exist where people can participate, where people can talk to other people who may be experiencing similar biases and can have a bigger voice. These are some steps that I think will make people feel more comfortable within the organization.
To add to that, I think it's more, and those are really, really great points. But not only, should they have a seat at the table, but they also need to have a voice at the table.
Yeah.
Having a voice, is important. I know, a lot of people are at the tables, but who's listening and who's asking for others to speak out, you know what I mean? And then incorporating those voices in the overall strategy.
Yeah, that point stood out to me as well. It's like, yeah, I want to be at the table, I want a knife and a fork, and I want to eat too.
Yeah.
So, it's more than just now you have a seat at the table, but I appreciate that Ashu brought that up.
Absolutely, and I'd also like to add that I think creating a culture where absolutely anyone is able to call out when that voice is indeed heard, right? It doesn't, everybody should feel that they have a permission to call out in favor of those voices not being heard. I think that's really important.
So I have one last question that's not on the list here. But I love you guys have answered these beautifully. Now we have data to support that companies, and McKinsey did an excellent study on this. Data that supports organizations that are diverse, that all around have diverse talent, outperform their peers and have higher profits than companies that are not. We're seeing this data now. We have concrete data. When I engage with a client, I kind of hold that information back because I want to see where their heads are before I go into launch and say, hey, this is going to improve your bottom line, because you want them to do it for the right reason. So my question to you all is, are you tracking that type of data as far as diverse talent to profitability? And if you do, how are you doing it with yourselves within your own organizations and your clients?
Since you're there. First in line.
So yes, though tracking those KPIs are very, very important. In fact, there are about 18 KPIs under diversity, equity, and inclusion, in terms of, having, I have all of these notes, Lord help me. I just want to name a few of them. Y'all please forgive me because, hold on one second, y'all. I got something really good for
Hey,
you all,
while she's
okay?
doing that, what's a KPI?
It's a key performance indicator.
Sorry about that.
So I want to name a couple of the KPIs, and we actually just created a diversity, equity, and inclusion scorecard. And so we're able to help our clients to measure and track their DE&I efforts. And so one of them is embeddedness of DE&I into the organizational culture. The other one is DE&I leadership, DE&I training and development, the recruitment and hiring, employee retention, employee evaluation and promotion, employee feedback on DE&I initiatives, supplier diversity programs, community engagement, DE&I data practices. And so what we did was we took a lot of this data and we created this scorecard to measure where our clients are and what they need to get them where they need to be.
That's powerful. It's very succinct, and everything is on there that needs to be measured.
Yes.
So,
That's great. That is a great set of KPIs that you pointed to. And we certainly have in our organization, in our company, we have most of those happening. And I think your question was, does it relate to, are we tracking it to business results? I think we're doing it because it is important. It actually gets the company on the long-term better footing than it has been. And I think that then will lead to better business results.
And similar, the same type of KPI. Well, we're building that out right now because we've only had a year of the DEI programming right now, but some of the main ones are within hiring, promotions of our BIPOC employees, employee satisfaction. That's like the ultimate biggest one there. And that all leading into our retention rate, right? So if we have a higher turnover rate, that's costing money for us to train each person that is coming in. So that's a business case within itself. So how can we keep our employees satisfied? How can we keep them engaged and keep them here past 6 months for that?
Yeah.
So those points, as long as you create that baseline and then over the years, then you can see how you're increasing within those metrics, then it'll fall into the retention, employee satisfaction, and you'll see the ultimate outcome of saving money.
awesome. Thank you so much for that. So I don't have any more questions for the panel that we got from the DEI committee, but I would like to know if anyone in the audience has questions. Deb?
Thank you, that was very good, very thorough. I appreciate how everyone expanding the type of stuff. I'm a recruiter, and I've owned a recruiting company since 2002, and I recruit nationwide in construction and property management and commercial real estate. I found during the pandemic, there are many jobs that you could work remote and they can do hybrid now, but there are many, many, many more you can't. A building engineer, he couldn't be working remote, he had to be in the building. A construction manager, he couldn't be working from home. The secretary could, or the project coordinator could, or the project counter could, but not the project manager, not the building guys, not the superintendents. So there are many, any service industry, you cannot work from home. Any airlines, you can't work from home. So how would companies like that, and that's never going to change. Any kind of blue collar work, any kind of industrial work, you have to be on site. So how do those kind of companies attract diverse talent?
That's a really good point. So you have to start tapping into your other benefits, right? So what are you offering in regards to, let's say, time off? So PTO, what are you offering as far as educational wise and tuition reimbursement? What are you offering in regards to your health program? So you have to start, building a more robust benefits package to see what attracts them and maybe
Do you think in those situations, I'm not going to interrupt.
No,
If I have to pay time off, then since I have to be in the office, should I get more paid time off than someone who's working from home? I'm just asking, should employers start doing different, not negative across the board kind of thing? Should they start saying, well, someone's in the office?
Yeah, that would
They
be-
can't run out, going out to childcare. They have to be in the office.
Exactly. That'll be a little bit more unfair. So I think you would have to do things, you know,
It's
equally
very-
across the
It's
board.
a,
Mhm.
it's a great, so for us, a lot of our people can work remote. Most of the population can work remote, but we also have factories
Right.
where people have to be on site. And in many of our teams, we have people who are working in labs, and they do have to work in the lab physically. And if they aren't in the lab physically, the other people who are working at home aren't going to be productive. So we do have to do a little bit of more extra TLC for the people who are actually going to be on site, right? Offering them maybe free meals, offering them some additional incentives to be there. Because especially during the pandemic, these guys, these employees were taking a bigger risk than others who was safely as opposed to staying at home. So yeah, you do have to do more for people who you expect to be at home.
They have to be there.
That happens.
Yeah, while you're talking, I was looking up some of the demographics of the city of Chandler here. And just to kind of put it into context, it's about 58% white, about 20% Hispanic, about 11% Asian, which is a very diverse group in itself. Roughly 5.5% Black and 5.5% mixed. And the mixed kind of throws a joker in the deck as far as identity groups. But just put it into context, I spent a lot of time with the district tutoring kids in the north part of the district. Okay. And in those schools, 70 to 80% of the kids are Hispanic. Okay. And by the way, most of them don't speak Spanish, which is a myth that we should probably explode here. They're just as American as anybody else. But I see as a group here in front of me, it's not as diverse as the city is. Who is representing the interests of the Hispanic community here, which is a big portion of the community and seems to be excluded from this whole discussion? Those people should be recruited into these jobs as well and included in this discussion as well. So maybe we can kind of work on that a little bit.
Can I address that, Kurt? We reached out to several people, and based upon schedules and that, this panel was not, we did not exclude somebody from that. It just happened to be how people's schedules worked out to be able to present today, so.
Okay, so maybe we can still talk about the Hispanic community. It's a large
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of this.
So again, I would say this, I hope I'm not here to represent the Asian community. I hope I'm here to represent the case for them.
Yeah.
So, as we talked about all these key performance indicators and looking at different ethnicity and are they well represented or not, we at least at Intel, we measure each of the different ethnicities, and we ensure that we are trying to match the available population. And when we don't, we take special efforts to go and make sure that we're creating the pipeline, we're recruiting in the right places and all of those places, so that the Hispanic community can be represented. I think that's my response. I think maybe we're not seeing it here, but I wouldn't take that as the case for ignoring.
It's just timing.
You know, and I think that, you know, if you have recommendations of people in the future that wants to, you know, speak out on behalf of, you know, that community, I think now is a great time for you to perhaps give them, you know, CEO Dr. Kimball, that I'm sorry if I'm messing up somebody's name. I'm sorry if I'm messing up names.
It's okay, it's okay.
But, you know, give them the information so that next time they have people that they can actually reach out to. You know, I like to, you know, and this is just going a little bit off, but sometimes, you know, we have to have an auto positive mindset about things. And so if, again, I'm not here to represent the Black community. I'm here to represent diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is what I do all around the country. And so even though I was busy and, you know, I'm part of a speakers bureau, so they had to go through all kinds of stuff to get me here. But I made sure that I was going to be here today to represent DE&I.
And if I can speak on behalf of the committee, we invited people who did exactly that, represented DE&I.
Yeah.
Not because the person was white, not
Yeah.
because they were black, not because they were green, because they represented DE&I. And we did, as Terri has referenced, we did invite other people, but because of their schedules, they were unable to attend.
Thank you, Jennifer. I believe Jennifer had a question.
In my work, I work with a lot of high-level HR professionals at mid-sized companies. And some of them are trying to get DE&I programs in, but they get the resistance piece. So what are some ways when you work with someone to overcome that resistance within the company to DE&I?
That's a great question. It starts at the top. Okay, so the leadership, the leadership have to embrace it, and those policies, have to be put in place. I want to use SRP for example, because Matt's here with SRP, and actually SRP, they're one of our clients. And so when you think about diversity, and I'll just use this as an example from a supplier diversity aspect. Companies have a set aside to work with diverse companies that could provide product and services to their organizations. And we just did a white paper on it. And there is proof that innovation, there's proof that from a bottom line perspective, the company is growing. And so I believe that when you're able to show that data, the statistics, the studies for that, it will change people's minds.
So you're making that business case as to
Yes,
why. Okay,
absolutely.
got it. Yeah. Well, I think that's a better way to communicate with a C-level person. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I'm gonna add on to what Dr. Trayham said, because it does start at the top. And I think you have to have open, honest conversations. You have to figure out where their heads, are they gonna walk the walk, or is just the flavor of the day?
Yeah.
I've had clients say, well, we want to be diverse now because of the George Floyd thing. It's like,
Yeah.
why? I mean, you weren't doing it then, why do you want to do it now? So it's DE&I is a tricky thing because it involves your heart, your mind, and your wallet. And I think just having an open dialogue, reassuring people that we're not affirmative action. We're not looking to meet quotas. You're not looking to, there's not going to be an invasion of a certain, nothing's going to change, nothing's going to be taken away from you. We want to enhance the work culture, not take away from it. But you have to address those fears that, we're going to become diverse. I'm going to be competing with person and the finger pointing, you got that job because you were Hispanic, you got that job because you were black, that whole kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you have to manage that very carefully early on.
Thank you, guys.
If I can just add a couple of comments. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's kind of the hot topic words right now, but this needs to be a part of your culture. It's not just a fad. And I will tell you, when our members, when we came out with the member survey back in 2016, and part of our initiatives in 2017, and this is what our members had to say right here in our community, was that DE&I was important. And I am very blessed that our DE&I committee is so diverse, because I knew I couldn't be that spokesperson to carry that out. But I can tell you, I am a better leader because of these individuals that are around me and carrying those and bringing their talents to the table. And that has evolved. And I truly mean that about our DE&I committee. They take a look at all different kinds of topics, but it really has to be, it's not just a fad, it's got to be part of your culture.
And I just want to say that I always want to acknowledge and thank the chamber for being bold enough to address DE&I, because as Dr. Banton alluded to, it's not always comfortable for everyone to have these types of conversations. But the chamber has been at the forefront, has been a leader in driving this conversation. And so kudos to you, Terri, as the CEO. Kudos to the chamber. Rick's over there. He's the chair of the board. So thank you to the board, Rick, for being courageous enough to talk about this particular topic.
Her comment, her question. So, I happen to be, minority, female who's also disabled, and I'm fortunate to be in a position in my company where I can help impact that change and educate leaders in our organization. I think that, DEI very much has to be customized per company, because unless you know what the pain points are of your employees, for example, in the semiconductor industry, we can have all of these grand ideas at our leadership level of what we think our employees want. But those employee engagements, those informal discussions, those employee satisfaction surveys, they let us know what's truly important to them, not what we think is important to them. For example, employees who have to drive into the workplace, maybe something in the benefit of our trip reduction plan of the gas reimbursement subsidies, bus, fare reimbursement subsidies. Those are things that would matter to them from a retention or an attraction standpoint for recruitment. But for a senior leadership team, we drive our cars to the office every day. We don't have to deal with that dynamic, so we might not even know if we had in the past for them. You mentioned, conducting employee satisfaction surveys and so forth. What types of results have you received in those surveys that then impacted the DEI initiatives and KPIs that we laid out?
Yeah, we found out quite a few things as far as we even had a survey on the flexible work option, right? So when we came back from the pandemic of completely being in the office, we're like, okay, so what would that we have to come back in office? Some of us do for that. So what options would you see us working from? So is it that hybrid option, completely remote and everything? So everybody seemed to be okay with the Monday, Friday option. So that came out of it. Also the different initiatives, diversity initiatives, lunches, just different things on how we can feel a little bit more, they can feel a little bit more inclusive for that. I'm trying to think what else. We also added a benefit for a 2-week remote option, kind of like vacation. So they can take 2 weeks out of the entire year and opt for remote work as well. So a lot of those different things came from the employee surveys as well. So like you said, we can't think of it at the top level. We have to have those focus groups. We have to have these conversations, and we have to have these surveys that are going out so we can hear from their voices as well.
Well, one of the things that when we went to this remote method of working, what seemed to happen is the number of meetings on everyone's calendars just shot up. And 24. And I think the barrier between work and home went completely disappeared. What we started feeling that our employees their mental health concerns were going down. And we did something, instead of 2 weeks, we did, once a quarter, just a mental wellness day. You can take it when there will be no expectations for that. That's one example. Another example is I talk about geodiversity. So we are a global company, and I'll start with my own personal experience. My team works in Malaysia, India, and the United States. The wonderful thing that the remote method allowed me to do is it allowed me to reach all 3 geos at one time. That one time, however, happens to be at 8 p.m. at night, which is terrible for the United States. And it took me a little bit, the survey came back for sure as to what was happening. And I had to realize that I have to break up my meetings. I have to do things twice so that hundreds of people don't have to go through this. So I mean, some simple things like that. You think things are easy and you try and optimize it, and then you get feedback saying, "No, I'm not working for everyone."
And it's interesting you bring up assessment. So there is a DEI cultural assessment survey that we can use. And then there are employee surveys. We found that some organizations that were either very mature or had less diversity, we put out a diversity survey, the response rate is low. If you include in that type of organization, because you're right, it's not one size fits all. If you do an employee survey and you made the DEI part of it, the response rate was much higher. Doing things, but you get the information back. But you get the information you need. So I have yet to find a client where it was a one size fit all with DEI. It's so important to realize that with our own organizations and organizations like this. You had a question?
Not really a question. I just had a statement to make. My name is Joyce Smith. I have a business here in Chandler, a notary business. And I just wanted to say that when you guys were talking about the best candidate for the job and bias, you know, I think that everybody has that bias. What I found though that with my business, I have a very, very diverse clientele. I think it comes back down to how we treat people, you know, and you know, when you're talking about that bias and really putting that out there, because when I do my business, they come to my office and those people, I get wonderful reviews from those people. I have a very, from all walks of life come to my office in terms of culture, ethnic culture, you know, but when they leave my office, they leave with a better, they're always better than when they came, because I make a connection with them. From wherever they came in the world, I made a connection with them. And I feel like that's always that difference. So when you're talking about bias, you're talking about the best candidate for the job, putting that into perspective. I think it has to do with, like Ashley said, their core competencies. Are you able to do this job? You know what I'm saying? And I think when you start talking to people, what I found was that we're so much alike and we're different. You know, so when we drop these biases, we can do so much better. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. Thank you so much.
I have a question. So, and this is to the whole panel. By the way, my name is Ashlee Cisneros. I represent the chamber with our DE&I committee. So the question to the whole panel is, so Dr. Cindy, you touched on the fact that diversity is not just race, right? There's disability, there's LGBTQ, things like that. So how do you get that representation? Because I can imagine you can't just like ask like in an interview, are you disabled? Are you LGBTQ? Like, what's your recommendation on getting that representation?
Great question.
Don't be shy, don't be shy.
I'll go. That has been a topic of discussion lately, because yes, legally you can't ask those questions, whether it's within the application or in an interview, right? For that, so it's kind of tough. So you know, we tap into obviously like veteran status and things that we can collect, disabilities and how we can make arrangements in that regard. So we have that information. We obviously have the ethnicity, the age, and all those different topics. I think it's going to be more so when they're part of your culture and start to get integrated, and like you're saying, to have some of these employer resource groups and see who will volunteer, or if we have certain topics that are coming up with lunch and learns, and people, I've learned over my experience, they will identify this as like, hey, I'm LGBTQ. I would love to help with Pride Month, or I would love to help with any topics that are out there. So again, it goes back to building that trust, those relationships, and people will eventually say, hey, you know, I would love to help within that particular topic for that. So that's one way we've kind of tried to maneuver around that without asking the direct questions.
Yeah, you can't ask the question. It is self-declared, right? So I think those are all, that's all you are. I think you just have to trust the process. If you keep taking the biases away, if you make sure you know, your interviewing practices are appropriate, if you are in places where that community exists, I think you will get to your goal, and you keep measuring. You have to keep measuring, and you have to keep seeing, okay, what I'm doing, why is it not working? And then change what you're doing. But you can't go target, can't go give preferential treatment. Those would all be doctrines.
And I can speak from a minority business development standpoint. Most minority businesses that are doing business in the public or private space, they have to go through a certification process. And in going through the certification process, they have to identify what group they belong to get access to those social responsibility programs or those supplier diversity programs. So.
And as Dr. Benton was saying, in regards to like the surveys as well, that could be another optional way that you can incorporate it into those employee satisfaction surveys, just like what type of programming would you like to see? And you can list it out, or, you know, just there's roundabout ways of how you can identify particular focuses, shall I say, for that.
And I think it's being a part of those communities, people within the workforce. One of the things when I have a EDI initiative, I like to do arrive early and just walk around. I have a client that has a 20-story building, and I walk on every floor, just observe, what am I seeing? What am I, you know, what is my eyesight observation? And then, you know, get a feel for the culture. And then I go back and say, I walked on 20 floors of this building and I didn't see anybody that looked like me. I saw very little women, and I saw this, you know, so, you know, it's that hitting reality that look around, you know, if you're diverse in what you need in the workforce. I have a small company, we don't have an HR department, so I just ask. I'll probably be sued at some point, but. Take the direct approach.
I think as just a follow-up to what your question was and what you had said about making it part of your culture. You know, for us, it was part of making it a culture was, for example, employees can voluntarily self-identify in their profiles in our system, what their ethnicity or gender or race or LGBTQ or preferred pronouns are. And that was something that we launched as part of our culture. So they can choose to put what their preferred pronouns on there. And we make available to our leadership team an ally badge that if they choose to wear it. We made sure to take a look at all of our handbooks and our policies, make them gender neutral and more inclusive. And those are just things we did in the background that will start becoming more apparent, and then maybe more individuals will feel comfortable just simply being themselves.
Yeah. Trust, there were a couple of you mentioned trust, and I think building that culture.
Yeah, so it's kind of a similar question to what we've been talking about, but I work primarily with like volunteer boards, and a lot of them are like a boys club essentially. So what are ways that you can kind of get past that perception and show that you want to open that door to diverse people being a part of that?
Just you, panel.
I would say it starts right here with where you are. 90% of it is showing up. And so being here, you're able to connect with us, and, you know, then you can take that back to your volunteer boards. And, you know, you're tapping, or you are congregating in these ecosystems that will allow you to then bring that back to your boards. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to connect. But you showed up today, so that's a start.
I agree with Dr. Trayham. Just saying, hey, I went to this workshop this morning. This is what I learned. Bringing back those facts, that data. This is the way that we can increase whatever, you know, whatever is important at that particular time for them. So again, bringing back those facts and having those conversations with them and your learnings.
But it's the lack of diversity isn't limited to volunteer boards. It's much more prevalent in corporate boards, right? So I think that is something that definitely does need to change. I do believe it will change. I recently took a course in corporate board membership, and I think we had about 60 people in the class, and 30 of them were women. So I do see that change happening, and I think once there are some of those, once those role models exist, we will see change.
And no, and talking to the board about the benefits of diversity, if you have all like one group of people or dominant culture within, everybody thinks a lot, thinks the same pretty much. You don't get those creative ideas from people's experience in the background when you just have one culture set mindset. So I would recommend talking about the benefits of making the board more diverse. Yeah.
I'm gonna follow what you just said. I'm sorry. And then this last thing I'm gonna say to you, I talk the whole time. Anyway, I've noticed in the past 2 years, I've been on LinkedIn, and this is more on the corporate side, but the worker side. And now you'll see a lot of, they'll say she, her, or, and a lot of people put that on their profile. And so when I see that on either an employer or an employee, if I'm trying to recruit or whatever, that really stands out to me because that's also they are believing in DE&I because it's become really prevalent on a lot of boards or things like that. They'll use that, and that tells you, okay, this is someone who believes in that kind of thing. Maybe that's the kind of company I want to work for. Or maybe that's the kind of person I want to attract because they believe in that, and that would, be someone I want to have in my company.
And yeah, going back to the question about diverse candidates, Ashlee mentioned earlier, going to the smaller events, to meet in the communities where they are. And so one of the things we're focusing on is improving our sourcing data. So, if I have an employee resource group focused on the Latino community, and they go to an event, they staff an event, they pass out flyers and QR codes or whatever. I can't make any assumptions about any candidate that comes out of that event, but I know that I've spent time with that community, and then as they later on self-identify, then we'll learn about that. But really getting into those communities and ensuring that the effort and the cost we're putting into connecting with those is paying off in the recruiting process.
Can I just add one more thing? You also have to understand whether you're a large corporation or a small corporation, people are in different stages on, first of all, everybody has a different opinion of what diversity is. Second of all, some people are like baby infants and are just starting to crawl in this journey, where then you have others that are very much more sophisticated. And this also goes to your board component. You have to just start taking that first step to be able to do that. And you said it best up here, all three of you. I mean, you're here, and those are the kinds of things. But also respecting where they are in that journey of where we're going.
Dr. Trayham, you mentioned DE&I KPIs, and I think you were reading from a list.
Yes, our diversity scorecard, DE&I scorecard.
Is that something that you would be willing to share with?
Yeah, actually, it's
That we
QR
can
code
maybe-
here. I only have one though, so, but I'll leave it right here and you can access it right there.
Okay, because what we'd like to do perhaps is maybe post it on our website for the, I don't know if it's proprietary. or
It
not.
is.
Oh.
More information.
Absolutely.
Give them a couple teasers.
Any other questions?
I just want to add to what Terri said. We absolutely, every companies are in different stages within their DEI journey. If your company has it within their budget, what I found really, really important, if you have a dedicated person to DEI, please do so, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work doing those audits. It's a lot of work trying to incorporate and kind of shift, not necessarily shift the culture, but embed it within the culture to put on these initiatives. It's a lot of person for one person. I'm the one person that's doing all this. But as the time is going on, I'm like trying to bring employees on board and trying to, get some other help underneath me. But if you have it in your budget, I would say to have somebody that is a professional that is focused within that area, because we have so many things that we're doing within our job, and that's just like an added thing, trying to incorporate that on top, and that gets left behind. You're doing the job that you're getting paid for, and then you're trying to build this culture. You're like, I'm gonna do my job in that. So yeah, if that's within your budget, I would say definitely, I would recommend to do so.
And the other thing is, when you embark on diversity, especially hiring and retention, don't forget about the dominant culture. Because if you have, this is an example, say I have my entire team, and everyone's in wheelchair. So I'm gonna hire a person who's physically able. I have to consider how they're gonna receive this person, there's gonna be some things that may make them uncomfortable. You have to address all that. So it's just not bringing in diverse talent. You also have to address the talent and the dominant culture that's there, so that everybody can get along together.
I just want to thank the panel. I'm McKibbin, I'm the chair of the chamber this year. This is super important for people to hear. And I think your last comment was really important as well, changing the dominant, understanding everybody that's in your organization is so important. As we recruit talent, we have companies, we have, I don't know, 1,500 companies that we have that are under the chamber. It's super important that people fully understand it. And Terry's point, there's some people that are baby steps right now, so people a little bit further along. We've had challenges with different organizations understanding it, because it means different things to different people. But I think doing these kind of panels is super, and we appreciate a bigger team today as well and stuff. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
I will do just a 1 minute commercial. Coming up in July, we have a phenomenal roundtable for you. It's going to focus on ability and disability. So please, please, please put it on your calendar. It's in July. Thank you so much.
Do you have a date? So I think Dr. Trayham stepped out for a minute. If there are no additional questions, I just want to thank our panel, our esteemed panel, for their expertise, and the dialogue that we shared today was just phenomenal. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Any further questions that you may have, you're welcome to submit them to the chamber, and they will distribute it to the panel. So please feel free. This is the end here. I want to thank our sponsors. None of this these events would be possible without our sponsors. PayPal, Toyota Financial Services, Intel, Edward Jones, Terri McKibbin, Salt River Project, and Wells Fargo. Also, at the end of the, you're going to receive a survey, an evaluation survey of this workshop. Please fill that out. We always want to get better with our workshops. We want to know what worked, what didn't work. Please say how fabulous the moderator was.
We're not paying you any more than you got paid already.
He'll be tough on her.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here. This has been an awesome experience. Trayham, you were out of the room when I thank the panel for being here. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure meeting you and all the panelists. Thanks again for your expertise. Continue to do good things in the world. You guys are forerunners and free thinkers, and I love that. Thank you so much.